Welcome to the 2019 CreatorCon Hackathon winners presentation. I'm Chuck Tomasi from ServiceNow, Senior TPMM. I work on the product platform marketing group, easy for me to say, but not easy to spell. This is the winners of our 2019 hackathon that we did at CreatorCon as part of Knowledge 19 in Las Vegas earlier this year. So it is my distinct pleasure to welcome Team Scrantonicity. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello. Hey, everyone.
Look at that, matching shirts and all. I love it. Well, let's go ahead and start with introductions of the team. I don't know if you guys have a pecking order or what, but introduce yourselves and your role, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of what you built.
I'll start. I'm Sean Teeple. I've been working on ServiceNow since around 2013. I've been on the delivery side pretty much the whole time, developer, architect, technical consultant, and then recently I'm switching over to solutions consultant, and I've been catching a lot of flack from the delivery team. They feel like I'm, cheating on them. They call it going to the dark side.
That's awesome. Welcome, Sean. Who else is in the room?
I'll go next. I'm Brandon Sinise. I'm also a developer and technical lead here at Pathways. I've been working with ServiceNow since 2014. Not quite as long as Sean, but I've gone through a lot of the same steps, minus sales.
You'll get there. We'll get you one day.
So I'm Jim Trott. I've been working with ServiceNow for about the same amount of time, 4 years. I think it was a month after Brando. And I'm also a developer, senior technical consultant. I do a lot of implementation of clients and things like that.
I'm also Jim Trott. I've been working for ServiceNow. Actually, I'm Marcus Sturbat. I'm a developer consultant also. I've been working here with ServiceNow for about 2.5 years. It's basically been my role the whole time, but I'm focused on the development side of things.
Good stuff.
I'm Mike Forte. I'm a senior technical consultant and developer as well.
All right. And if these gentlemen look familiar, I have to point out that they were on the similar video last year when we talked to the first, second, and third place winners. You guys took an award last year as well.
Yeah, that was the first year we were there last year. So we set the bar higher this year, and we joke and say we should have taken second place this year, so that next year we still we have room to go.
And I got to ask the question, because you work together, does that make it's kind of like a band that lives together? You expect them to break up because they're too stressed out over little things. Do you find that working together is an advantage or a disadvantage when you're dealing with an event like the hackathon?
Definitely an advantage with the environment we have here. I mean, we all work real close together, but we have a lot of fun. We know each other's strengths. I think that's actually a big part of the hackathon experience is knowing the strengths of each individual and making sure that they focus on the area that they're strong in. So for us, benefit, but I can see it going the way you described in some scenarios.
Yeah.
And do you plan ahead? Do you think about Knowledge 2020 and what are we going to do for the hackathon? Have you already got ideas about that?
Yeah, we actually thought of this idea leaving Knowledge the previous year because our flight got delayed. We were stuck in an airport for hours. We were jumping to hotels where we were stuck in Charlotte, and we had all these receipts and things. We were thinking, this is going to be a nightmare. I wish we had an easier way to do expenses. So that was kind of the first idea, and we had a couple of ideas we threw out there, and this one ended up sticking.
Excellent. Well, without further delay, let's find out what idea came out of that misadventure of delayed flights. Why don't you go ahead and walk us through your presentation?
Okay, so the application we named Rison. which Marcus actually coined. It's Dutch for to travel. So, as mentioned, the problem addressed here is revolving around expenses and making that experience a lot more streamlined, easier on the individual that's expensing the items.
It's certainly relatable because everybody loves expense reports, don't they?
Everybody likes the end result, but nobody likes putting in expenses.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of drew us to this specifically was every company I work with, at least, there's so many integrated solutions. There's ServiceNow, there's any number of other applications, and for some reason, expenses are always like, you fill out like stone tablets, and then so we figured that, there's solutions for that too, but not a lot of them are being implemented. So if we were able to somehow integrate this with ServiceNow, which, is already used by, the clients were, probably watching this video, it might be something that would be useful. So that's kind of what we decided to include that feature.
And you've got two approaches here. One is for the expenses, the other is for travel. Now that's a pretty hefty thing to bite off.
Yeah. So we'll get into the details of it, but we found some APIs that were available that allowed you to book flights and book hotels, and then we also added some functionality to scan receipts and get that information back. So we focused on the input as well as the output because we built some things around being able to review that information and track it appropriately.
Honestly, choosing to include all of it. There's a couple suites out there that do all of the above, so it kind of made sense to include it. But also, we had a lot of ideas for Hackathon, and we couldn't pare it down any more than what we did. So we kind of decided, we'll go for all of it. I guess I don't know if we got lucky or we're just we got it all in there. So
yeah, I think too. The two might sound different, but a lot of times when you're traveling and you're traveling for work, you're generating expenses where most of my receipts come from. So it kind of just made sense, and we thought, we want to provide a complete package. So it really, once you go through it, it definitely makes sense. They are definitely tied together.
They do go hand in hand.
Okay.
So this is high level solution really. So we integrated with a couple. We integrated with a couple APIs in order to meet some of the needs. So we identified some of the things being able to submit an expense and assign them to an expense report for approval. And then we also had some focus on long-term expense data, repeatable expenses that can happen in a reoccurring fashion. And we also focused on reporting and auditing. So that's that output that I mentioned. We wanted to be able to have somebody book things independently. You'll see one of the things that we included was actually rideshare access, because one of the troubles when you're traveling with a group is a couple members might have, the magic MasterCard, and you're looking to them to pay for it, or you have to go through some steps to get that receipt in some way or another to eventually report it. It's a lot easier for the people that have that wonderful card.
Yeah.
And
now, as you were coming up with the idea a year ago, were you? I'm guessing you did some research on some of these APIs. This isn't the kind of thing that you want to sit down and start reading documents at the hackathon, correct?
Yeah, we threw around ideas a lot. Some of the inspiration too came from just cool features that we thought we would want to integrate. So we knew we wanted to target expenses, and we knew we wanted to play around with the virtual agent and go take it kind of as far as we could with it. So we started looking around for different API options. Maybe we started getting serious about it, maybe the month leading up to Knowledge, looking around for what our options could be.
Okay.
Our main objective was just to make sure, we had an idea, we made sure, okay, so does an API for this exist? Is it something that we can do for free or for limited expense, at the hackathon? we didn't dive too much further than that. So actually, that we can talk about that later too. But a big part of the first 2 or 3 or 4 hours of hackathon was getting our integrations working as we wanted them to. So that was a big part of it. But luckily, had we not put any preparation into like just getting an idea of what was out there, what was available, that would have been, it's one of the pieces of advice we give to someone looking to do hackathon in the later years is obviously don't go and like pre-care anything, but have an idea of what it is that you want to build, know what external resources you're going to need, and find out if it's feasible.
Good point. Good point. And I was going to mention that the rules of the hackathon don't preclude you from doing research. They just preclude you from walking in with the app half built or the integration. It's like, yeah, I got some code I can borrow from this last project. And we want to start this all from scratch, but you can come in and go, all right, here's a bookmark to an API on Uber that I can use.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, we outlined the areas we wanted to target and the API options. We had a couple for some of them, and then kind of delegated the tasks and just worked at it for the 8+ hours we were in there.
Goes fast, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
All right, take us through the journey a little bit more. What else you got?
So this is high-level technology, and I'll be calling it out as we go through the demo of the actual application. Like I mentioned, virtual agent was definitely a big part of what we wanted to use, and it really lended to a lot of the experience that we were looking to aid as far as submitting, tracking, and planning traveling and expenses.
Okay. So I'm noticing you got that comment about the instance build was not compatible. Was it Madrid or was there a plugin missing? Any thoughts on what was going on there?
Well, actually, you know what? Is we were setting up our integrations for we built the next we'll mention is our integrations, but we were still setting that up, and there's an announcement that was made by one of the people who were proctoring the hackathon. They announced, anyone who is looking to integrate with the app, the build that they said the build that we gave you, that we being ServiceNow, didn't allow for integrating with the new version of the app. So before we even got that far, we knew not to go that route. So I actually don't know the details of what it is that precluded us from using that, but that was lucky that they let us know before we got that far. Otherwise, we'd have been.
Yeah, it was known very early on, so we didn't get even.
Curious. Okay.
Right. So, we used the classic app, and we put a couple things in there, and you'll see, but you can do pretty much all of the functionality we built through the mobile app, but we didn't want to force people to use the mobile app. So a lot of the functionality we focused on the app for, you can also accomplish through either the service portal or even you'll see Slack we integrated with to communicate with the virtual agent. And then we also built a portal. Brandon here is a whiz kid with portals and web pages. So he built a really, really impressive portal themed around the TV show The Office. If you didn't notice by now, our team name is Team Scrantonicity. We're basically based out of Scranton. We were in Scranton. We've recently moved just outside of it. But you were able to see what would be the Dunder Mifflin building right from our office. So the whole thing themed Dunder Mifflin, and there's a lot of fun little Easter eggs in it.
All right.
So this gets into the actual APIs and outside technology that we use. So you heard I mentioned Slack. We did an integration focusing on the virtual agent. When it comes to the APIs, we use one called Skyscanner, and the Skyscanner app accomplished two of the things we were targeting, flight booking and the hotel booking. And then I also mentioned rideshare previously. We used Uber API, and based on the dates that you were traveling, it will add you to your business account if it's set up with it. That way, all of the rides taken during that trip are expensed to the company right away through that business account.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the receipt scanning, we used OCR.space. And, all that does is we take a picture. You can take it right in the mobile device or upload it, and it will send the image to OCR.space, which will return the characters that it's able to recognize, and then we parse through it and try and find the total. So we'll search for total amount, things like that.
So I'm picking up a theme here that you weren't just concentrating on cool technologies and APIs to use. You're thinking about the experience. What do we want a good expense report experience to be like? How do we capture that and make it easy, make it consumer friendly, correct?
Definitely. And there's really two reasons why. One being this is an actual problem that we have. We don't like the process of submitting expenses, and the other is targeted more towards just the hackathon competition. We find there's a lot of value in not just building, one cool piece of functionality to show off, to try and build a whole experience that isn't just, one note. It's really, there's a lot of things to keep going through, and it's basically a suite of functionality.
Yeah, one of the main things we wanted to make sure that we focused on was capturing expenses as they were created, because the hardest thing to get employees to do is to create the expenses after the fact.
Yeah.
Because, Chuck mentioned internally, we reimburse expenses for various things in pathways, and people will, it'll go 6 months before, our accounts payable, people will come back to us and be like, you haven't submitted this. So you literally can't pay us to put our expenses in. So we know that it's important to be able to capture these easily without having to intervene or go back and bring your receipts home and take care of all that stuff.
Yeah, or hold on to them at 4 o'clock in the morning at an airport or hotel.
In Las Vegas.
Yeah, in Las Vegas.
Well, and then a lot of receipts are thermal printed, so the older they get, the harder they are to read too.
Yep. Well, that's what happens when it's, when you're real tired and you just want to get to the hotel room. You just stuff them in a bag somewhere. The more crinkled up they get, the worse they get to scan.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who does that. All right, take us on.
All right.
What? This slide confuses me. You have to explain why no integration hub.
So what we utilized was the messaging application. We registered the messaging app rather than using the integration hub. And the main reason was, when you think about the virtual agent, it's one consistent experience. It's a persistent conversation.
Yes.
So the integration hub is great for if you have a trigger that goes off.
Yep.
And you can run a workflow separate from the experience that is interacting with it. We probably could have twisted its arm to try and figure out some way to have a conversation, have an integration hub, do some work with the different APIs, and then continue the conversation in one way or another. But we didn't want to just force integration hub in. We knew that was a big theme and a big cool feature that had a lot of work being put into it from ServiceNow. But at the end of the day, it would have been a sacrifice on the actual experience and the actual build.
Well, kudos to you for recognizing that you had a round hole and a square peg. It's a nice feature to have, and it's an integration that's already built. But if it doesn't work for you, it's the difference between, in ServiceNow terms, a difference between a business rule and a scheduled job.
Right.
They're two different things. So if one doesn't fit, let's not use it.
And I don't know if you want to speak too much out of school on this, but consider this as high level of credibility as like a tabloid. But we were speaking to someone who represented ServiceNow on the engineering side, who was, I think, actually was one of the judges. And he came to us and asked us this question: why did we not use that integration hub? That's why we wanted to bring it up. And he kind of implied, he basically gave him the feedback that we just mentioned now, and he kind of let us know that they were considering internally within ServiceNow finding a way to make the integration hub features available within the flow designer is available for virtual agents to bring it all together. So if there's anybody out there who's watching this video who's ran into this or is looking, wondering what the roadmap is for that, that may be something, it is something that's at least on the radar of ServiceNow.
I was just going to ask you if any of our product managers or developers were there. It sounds like they are. They listen. We can't make any promises that it's out there. Obviously, it depends on customer demand. But the fact that you brought this use case to light makes them go, let's see if there's a need. I love it.
Yeah, I thought that was great. The exact reason why we explained that we didn't use it was already being addressed. I think that's going to make the capabilities of the virtual agent and the integration hub, exponentially stronger. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, we appreciate as a partner, ServiceNow keeping their eyes and ears open for that kind of room for potential growth. So even if it doesn't come to that, it might not be a client need for that or customer need, but it's just nice to know that that's something that they wanted feedback on.
Okay, how many more slides do we got? I want to see some stuff.
I think that's product demo.
Wow, that wasn't planned at all, was it?
I don't think so.
All right. So.
All right. The demo's going to start from my mobile device.
So quick.
Yeah, because that makes sense. A lot of this is mobile based, so we got to do a little screen sharing thing going on.
Okay.
I see it. Looks good.
So, as mentioned, this is the classic app. So I'm going to dive right into the virtual agent conversations that we built out.
Yeah, walk me through that tired employee that gets to the hotel and crams the receipt in the bag.
Well, first we'll start with the excited employee that will eventually get tired because he's planning his trip. He doesn't know what's waiting for him at the airport.
Okay.
So we built a handful of custom conversations. I'll show them all here. So we're going to start with booking a flight.
Mm-hmm.
And for the purposes of the demo, we baked in a lot of this into one conversation. Long term, we would separate these to be able to be standalone. But for the purposes of you're only on stage for so many minutes. So you'll see booking a flight and a hotel and a couple other things all in one conversation. So it asks me where it is that I'm traveling from. So in order to, properly represent the scenario that spawned this idea, I'm going to say I'm in Charlotte. And when you do that, it looks, this is using that Skyscanner API. It looks up airports in the area that you said you were departing from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say Charlotte Douglas.
I love the responses. Terrific.
Got to give it a little life. So that's where you're going to. Another option you can do is type in the airport codes. So I'm going to select the McCarran.
I would have gone to Las Brujas.
So here it's asking when I will be departing. So I'm going to say the 24th.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you need at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, right.
Our travel policy does not comply with such short notice trips.
And then when I'll be returning, and I really like the calendar view here. I'm really happy with how it looks in the virtual agent, especially on mobile.
Yeah, we were getting impressed by ServiceNow's features as we were learning how to use them. It was great.
And you could even put GIFs inside the conversation. So Snoop Dogg does the work here, looking around for a local for a flight for you.
The creativity is amazing. I love it.
Just like Jim's not included if you buy this.
That's custom. So in this scenario, with those dates, it looked up the SI scanner, came back with some options, and with those options, it has some summary about your options.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see it has whether or not there's a layover, who the airline is, and the cost of it.
Nice.
I'm going to pick the direct flight, although it's more expensive.
Of course.
And then this is, again, just a confirmation. Make sure you selected the right one and the same summary information. So now that my flight is planned, it wants to know if I want to book a hotel. You know, that's basically expected. You don't have to, but in this scenario, I do need a hotel.
Sure.
So it already knows where you're going, which is a benefit of including this all in the same conversation. So it uses your destination and your dates to pass that information to Skyscanner and return your different options. And this carousel here is, I think,
awesome.
Really cool, right?
What a great way to present options like that.
Yeah, you could full size the image.
I forget who was from the team that actually put I think it was either just Jim who put the carousel. I'm like, how did you develop that? Like, did you just tell it it's like a parameter?
So I'm going to pick the...
that's like, that. I think it makes choice lists seem so Stone Age, doesn't it?
Right? Yeah. And you get the cost per night. I'm going to pick the Mandalay Bay because I like their pools.
You said that during the presentation at the Venetian, and I feel like your people were like, turkers were like...
I didn't even think of that.
Did you say the pools is in swimming pool or the food?
Oh, no, each of the pools. The swimming pools.
I prefer the food at the Mandalay Bay, too.
So the flight is booked, the hotel's booked. The next thing is that it asks if you need rideshare access. So just like with the hotel, it already knows the duration of your trip. So all it has to do is ask if you want to be added to rideshare access, and it will add you for the duration of the trip.
Pretty cool.
And this is with Uber. Lyft has similar APIs. We build a lot of this to be modular so that depending on the choices of the company, the preferences of the company, you can take things out and switch it out with a different API while still using the main structure of the conversations.
Great idea.
So we've been added Uber for business. We have a flight. We have a hotel. What it's trying to do at this point is actually create expense lines and expense reports to tie them to. It says I don't have an expense report right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it asked me to name one. I'm going to say Las Vegas. And I think these cards that come back are really, visually pleasing. If I click you can see the expense report on the top. There is actually a link. If you click that, it will bring you to the record. I'm going to leave that alone for now,
mm-hmm.
and I'll show you that functionality in a minute. So that's all done. Now there's an expense line representing all those purchases, and there's an expense report created. So the next thing that I'm going to do is scan a receipt.
Because you probably had to stop at the airport for a lunch.
Yeah, I got to get some food, maybe some drinks.
Oh, did you bring a sample receipt?
Might need some work supplies as well. So right in line with the conversation, it asks you, click here to upload an image, and you can select a file that already exists, or you can take a photo right on the fly.
Yeah.
So we have a receipt here this is for some work supplies. So this is with the previously mentioned OCR.space. So this gets sent off, does the character recognition, comes back as JSON, and we parse through it. There's a number of combinations of ways that receipts might say total. So we had to look for total amount to make it diverse. Sure. And it comes back, you can see it's $19.16, which is on the receipt. It asks if it's correct. If it's not, I can manually enter one. But what happens is the image is attached to the expense line itself. Yeah. So that way, if there's a mistake or somebody's fudging the numbers a little, there's evidence there. Somebody can manually check that when the expense report goes for approval. I'm going to say it's correct. And then what we have it do is it looks at your current expense reports to see what one you want to tie it to.
Sure.
So previously when it did this, it didn't find one. And asked if I wanted to create one. This is the one that I created. I'm going to say yes. It hopes I have a most fantabulous day. A kind virtual agent. So I mentioned this is a link here, so I'm actually going to click that. We added some small but effective functionality to kind of close the loop on the mobile experience. So this is the expense report that I created.
Yeah.
You can see the total is starting to add up. I can add other attachments if I want to, but we built a UI action for mobile so you can submit it right from here whenever you're ready to. I'm going to do that at this point. So you can see the state is submitted, and that's a majority of the input that we built. We also, as I mentioned, integrated with Slack. So I'm going to stop sharing on mobile, and I'm going to share on my computer to show what that looks like.
So while Sean's ready this up, just a quick thing we're going to say is that we utilize a lot of APIs that we basically found that worked and were either cheap or free. But we try to make it as modular as possible so that from wherever we have connections, that if you had access to your own API or something, if this was a product that was available externally, because we are trying to clean it up to make it something that's available publicly, that you'd be able to feed in whatever your own access points are for external data. But you need to do some customization, obviously, because the formatting of the data could be any number of ways, but we try to make it as modular as possible. Yeah,
the way we did Slack was, it's actually pretty simple to set up. You register a messaging application, and ServiceNow aids in setting up Slack. I think it's called Workspace by Facebook, and then Microsoft Teams. All are set up kind of the same way. And it's a real easy thing to add on, but it gives the people options depending on what their medium is. Mobile, the messaging application, or you can do all this from the portal, which we'll show you.
That's really important as you're thinking about how you want to build an application, is that design of configurability. I always try to tell people, data-driven configuration. You may think that no one's ever going to change your application, but you'd be surprised how many times requirements change or services change or contracts get renegotiated, and you don't want to spend a whole lot of time re-engineering your application. It's, okay, change the system property, or edit a few entries in a table, and we're good to go. You can often do that stuff right in production without impacting any release dates.
Yeah, we experience a lot of iterative builds over the years. You know, we work on some applications for years, and sometimes the thing they start as doesn't really look like the thing that they are now. So we've definitely learned a lot of tricks and tips to make sure things are scalable without having to overhaul the whole application.
Like simple things like for expenses, you know, the no two companies are going to do expenses the same way. You're not going to convince accounting to change how they do things for a tool. So, like for example, like on the back end, if you create an expense report, the default length of time that it exists for, whether it's for a week, a month, or ad hoc, you can define that within a system property, for example.
Yep. All right. So what are we doing with Slack?
So with Slack, we can actually, everything that I just showed, you can do in here as well. I'm going to show a use case where we look up your submitted expense report. So you saw in the mobile app, I just submitted that expense report. And let's say you wanted to check on the status of it because you really want that money. Weekend's coming up. Maybe you're going to Vegas again and you lost all your money last time.
That never happens.
So I'm going to check submitted expense reports. Again, these are all conversations that we built. Or in the flow formatter. So this just looks up any of your expense reports that are in a submitted state. It asks you if it's the correct one. I'm going to say yes. And again, you get these cards. I really like these. You can customize the content that's within it. It's kind of similar to notification setup. And then again, you can go to the expense report right from here, either through the link or from this action.
Right,
here.
right.
And that's it for Slack. We just, wanted to tie in an extra, another option, another medium.
Nice. And like you said, that's the same conversation on the back end. You built that topic in Virtual Agent Designer, and it's just exposed either through the portal or through Slack or, like you said, Microsoft Teams or Facebook. There's different ways you can integrate into that, but you don't have to touch the conversation itself.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of options for integrating with Slack. I know we touched on the integration hub already. There's a lot of ways to accomplish that, but based on the needs, we were really focusing on the virtual agent. And this had the least overhead and did everything we needed it to. So it was really impressive to see how you didn't have to scratch your head for too long in order to get these results.
Yeah, I was surprised the first time I did this too. It's like, really, that's all you have to do to hook up Slack to Virtual Agent? It was what, about 3 minutes?
Yeah, my whole team. I think they had an idea that it was going to take longer. I was like, oh, we should integrate it with Slack too. That wasn't necessarily an idea we had going into it, and there's maybe 2 hours left, and I was like, oh, I'll set it up with Slack, and they were like, oh, all right, that's a pretty good idea. Do you want it? And then I was basically like, done.
Not much of a stretch goal, is it?
It was so fast. It was ridiculous.
It was very good.
Yeah, the timing was perfect. I actually spent a lot of time learning and setting up all of the different ways that you can use Slack and ServiceNow, maybe a month and a half, 2 months before Hackathon. So it's really beneficial for me.
So aside from the technical challenge of hooking up Slack to ServiceNow, what were some of the challenges you had while building this application?
Well, the
integrations was initially getting the REST communication between our endpoints and the application.
Our OCR API that we were using actually went down. Both the free and the paid for version both went down for a little while, which is something that unfortunately you can't control.
You had to switch to the trial, like the free, like public.
Yeah.
So we paid for it. The paid for one went down, so we had to switch to the free one because that one was still up.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Hadn't gone down, all day until like right before
the demo. Yeah.
What else?
I tried to get the e-checks to automatically go at the very end, but I couldn't get that integration working, and I think it only has an hour left.
Yeah, that was one of the things. That's the only thing that we didn't end up having time for. That wasn't really something that we had originally scoped either. Like we thought of Slack, thought of e-check integration because we give out internally that via e-checks we get reimbursements. So we thought, let's do that. We got pretty decent amount of the way through it, but we didn't have time to mess with adding that in at the end.
Yeah, that's something we want to target. We plan on going through all this, polishing it, adding use cases to it, and one of them is that you automatically get a check, an e-check, when it's approved. We know it's possible. Like Mike said, we had maybe an hour left, and you know how it goes where everything's working and you start trying to tweak stuff and then everything falls apart. So we had the foresight to back off from that. We dipped our toes in, and then kind of the water was too cold.
I don't want to get too in the weeds or any of the technical stuff, but we ran into the typical, this should work, why doesn't this work? Like
right.
The variables on the flow designer, was it, Sean? Where depending on the order you put them, it was just a quirk of the flow designer. I don't know if it was ever patched or that's just not an issue, but it's depending on the order in which you define, you refer to a variable before you refer to like something like the condition. Yeah, basically weird things with the condition where we had to flip things around. Just a little growing pains with the newness of the application.
And it sounds like you had a good learning experience too. Like, hey, let's hook up Slack. Well, that was easy.
I taught these guys a thing or two. Everything I know.
What, the guy from sales?
Right? Yeah.
Well, he can do it. Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to turn my camera back on. I don't know is there more that you'd like to share? Anything under the hood, or?
There's the service portal is really the last part. And it's
okay.
It's a lot of it's focused on. Well, we have input as well on it. I'm actually going to let Brandon drive this. Yeah, because he is the mastermind behind this.
Yeah, I got a couple of things. You just take my seat.
Do tell.
Yeah.
I probably would have spent 7.5 hours of that 8-hour hackathon doing the CSS. That's how I roll.
This was my primary responsibility, so this was kind of fun.
Yeah.
So one of the great things about Service Portal is the fact that a lot of people look at it like it's this walled garden, but it really isn't. I mean, you could import libraries, and you could create something inside of here like you could on any website. So I actually made this top slider using something called Revolution Slider, which is I think it's an extension for WordPress, and it's also a standalone app. But by using the Angular includes on widgets, you could build something like this, of course, here too.
Nice.
Some of the other things that I wanted to capture here too is that we wanted to make sure that if anybody wanted to submit these expenses, that like Sean said, it's modular. You've got many different ways in order to do this. Something else that we thought was a good idea is that we added frequently asked questions. So they're basically knowledge base articles. So for example, if somebody needed help on updating their profile or needed to understand that, this is a good way that you could flag an article that you have in your existing knowledge base, and they'll show up here, and they're pasted here so that those quick wins that people have questions about, they can come here and they can get answers to that very quickly. One of the cool things that the service portal had in recent releases are announcements. So I thought you could utilize that in a way almost like a news feed. So what we did down here is we take the 4 latest announcements and use them as reading as though they're a news feed, and you can click it open, read more. Basic stuff, though.
Creative. Yeah, I like that.
And then at the very bottom, we included a couple of logos and contact information, which is standard stuff. I think the last thing I would say, too, is that it's important to note that you can still access the virtual agent from here.
Yeah.
I could left click. So same way that you could anywhere else.
Yeah,
I was surprised how easy that is to actually implement, too. It's like, let's put virtual agent in the service portal.
I think it's the bottom right. Like, I don't know how they get the float down there at the bottom right. You literally add it to anywhere on the page.
It doesn't matter where you put it on your page. It will appear there.
It knows where it's going. It doesn't need to ask for direction.
It's a tough thing to show whatever corner you want.
You pretty much can't screw that one up.
Right. We did some reporting as well so that you could view your own receipts, because we thought of if somebody wanted to see a high-level view in an easy access way, we put it on the portal. So if you're a manager, you can see your branches. In this case, if you're Michael Scott, you can see the Scranton branch and what everyone's spending Dunder Mifflin's money on.
So this is useful as a manager, definitely from like a bird's eye view, and you can see what everybody is spending them on here. See that cell phone, airline tickets, very high item there, and then you can also see what's in draft, what's been submitted. So it gives you a way to manage your employees' expenses a little bit better too.
That's kind of would be the selling point for this kind of integration within ServiceNow of an application of an expenses app, because one of ServiceNow's greatest strengths is reporting and performance analytics. So making this kind of thing reportable, not having to build over-engineered Excel spreadsheets is a big advantage.
Mm-hmm. No. Definitely don't want people to sell.
I like it. You got to, and no good demo goes without a good dashboard of some type.
Right. I think that's it. Did I miss anything?
No, I mean, we had a record producer that we built to create expense reports as well. Other than that, real simple thing. Like we said earlier, a big part of this was focusing on a whole experience instead of one technology or one flashy piece of functionality and then just recycling that over and over. So we wanted to make sure there's a lot of options, a lot of ways to do the same thing.
So I got to ask you, what's rolling around in your head for next year? Or don't you want to reveal that yet?
Oh, that's true.
Great question.
I will say this, we had an idea. It's actually something that I've been wanting to build for years. And we started building, we almost got off the ground a couple times. And then I started thinking, why don't we try and do it at Hackathon this year? We started kind of planning out the different components that you needed before we realized that you would have needed, a whole wall of a whiteboard to plan it out. It's very complex. Mm-hmm. It's a whole it's more than just something you would build at a hackathon. So we could get that down or pull a part of it out, maybe that. I won't reveal too much, but we don't have any. We didn't get stuck in any terrible scenarios to spawn an idea this year.
So bad things will happen.
You were in a terrible situation, but your other idea would be good. That's our only hit.
That's good.
And when it comes to the releases, you guys are probably in the same boat I am, where you're looking at the platform capabilities and saying, how can that work to my advantage? How can I take that and add it to not just the hackathon, but your customer solutions? Is how does that work? We've got New York coming up this fall in Q3. We've got Orlando in Q1. So there's a lot more toys coming to your toolbox.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's something we definitely focus on, and we try to keep up on it just in general.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. It's been a treat talking to you again, and wish you all the success in the upcoming year, and look forward to seeing you at Knowledge 20.